Hi, everybody. This is Dion Major. I'm joined with Daren Lauda, CEO of OutsetOps, and thank you for joining us for our very first on-demand content for you. We are really excited to bring this to you. If you've been following us for a while on our LinkedIn live shows, you've seen Daren join us there, and we thought it would be a good idea to give you a little bit more content and content and context around this really important topic of sales forecasting. So thank you for joining us, Daren. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. And we're really looking forward to this conversation with you today.
Of course, glad to be here. I need to get a great slide background like yours. You just got my office at the house here. Yours looks great.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I know a lady that could make one for you. She's my intern. She's amazing.
Fantastic. I'll take up on that.
Absolutely. All right. So Daren, kind of set the stage for us. What are we going to kind of in the next 25 minutes or so, what is our journey going to entail as we talk about sales forecasting?
I think we're really going to kind of go through what is forecasting. It seems silly at times to give it a definition, but I think sometimes we need definitions to work from and to make sure we're consistent. We'll talk about the difference between pipeline management and sales forecasting. I think those things get blurred. I
Yes.
think it's really common, for example, for people to try to accomplish both topics in one meeting. I think they're really different things.
Yeah.
We'll talk about why sales forecasting is important, key stakeholders who should be involved in forecasting. Not to telegraph things, but for a lot of people, well, that's the AE and the manager, right? Not necessarily. There's lots of people who can be involved in a forecast meeting or model. How do we make sure they're accurate? What steps can we take to make sure we have the most accurate forecasts? Ways to manage the team, and hopefully, I think you'll share a framework so people can kind of document their key learnings and takeaways.
Absolutely. I think some of these are really important. All right, let's jump into it, right? And for everybody that has been following us for a while, we always talk about definition and purpose, right? Because without purpose, abuse is inevitable, right? Otherwise, we don't know what we're doing or how we're doing it, and we're floating. So Daren, walk us through when you're leading your teams and now as a CEO of Outset, the definition and the purpose of forecasting.
Sure. So I worked at Sales Forecast quite a while ago, and I love their definitions. I use their content as a resource quite frequently. And I like this definition that they gave, which says, it's basically an expression of expected sales revenue. I think that's a really simple definition
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. It has phrases like a certain time period. A forecast is time bound. Are we doing it for the month or the quarter, a rolling 90-day window, a year? How are we forecasting? But when I think about, the real definition and the real purpose for me, your forecast is your promise. It's your commitment to the business. You're saying this is what I or my team will deliver on that certain time period. I had a manager once who said, a promise made is a promise kept. He said it all the time.
Yeah.
Another who said your say-do ratio has to be 1-to-1. If you say it, you got
Yeah.
to do it. All right. That's a forecast. It's your commitment to the business. And when I think about defining at a high level, we'll touch on these things as we go through the conversation. There are a lot of key components. But the way I would typically express my forecast would be my commit number is, my best case number is, right? I'm giving an actual number that I or my team will roll.
Yeah.
Understand what deals are in the commit and what deals are in the best. And I'm prepared to
Hmm.
talk about what it's going to take to get those best case deals from best into commit and over the line on that time window.
Yeah.
It's a way to really make and express a promise in a consistent way that the business can count on.
Absolutely. I think that's amazing and ties into our next point of kind of introducing, right? Like when we think about accuracy, when we think about those things, when we think about, like you were saying, as a sales leader, how are you systematizing in your head? How are you creating a system by which you think about and you convey the different definitions and purpose of your sales forecasting, right? So walk us through some of this introduction.
Yeah, so I think one of the key things that happens in forecasting, especially if you grew up in the sales organization like me, um, is you can instantly think that it's this frustrating thing that the manager beats you up for, that maybe doesn't have a ton of purpose.
Right.
It took me a while to figure out how much purpose forecasting really has to everyone in the business. Um, and most of this session, I think we're going to talk about forecasting for current month, current quarter. But let's take a step back just for a second.
Yep.
Many of us, if we're in the month of February, just went through a planning exercise for the new fiscal year, right? And we tried to build some level of forecast for what sales could deliver. And that number is critical to the business for a lot of reasons. If I pick marketing, the sales commitment that's made for the year is going to inform the marketing budget. How much does marketing need to help drive the necessary pipeline? If we break down that sales forecast into segments for the year, marketing is going to spend for small business and velocity probably differently than it spends for enterprise and maybe account-based marketing.
Right. Yep.
Commitment sales makes informs how marketing behaves.
Hmm.
The commitments sales makes are going to inform who customer success hires and how they staff,
Right.
right? The more new customers we close, the more people we're going to need to onboard and train and support those customers.
Yep. Yep.
That sales commitment is going to inform finance of how they need to manage the business, or at least help manage the business to achieve the metrics our board, our investors, our CEO wants.
Yep. Yep.
Right? Um, Product is kind of twofold for me. Um, Product is A, hoping that we're going to sell a lot so they get more budget to build more really cool stuff that we all
Right.
want. But B, they might be part of the sales forecast. Product may have committed a new product line to launch in August, right? Which means I, as a sales leader, have to make a bet on what I can do with that product. And the marketing, again, has to figure out how to fund that new product. So all this motion that's going together, even before the year starts, begins with sales.
Yep.
Um, and a lot of people think that the world revolves around sales, and that's egotistical. That's not my intent here. But the sales commitments we make are really going to form how the rest of the business is going to staff and behave.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
right. Then when we get into the motion, we have to do what we say each month and each quarter. Otherwise, everything falls apart.
Absolutely, Darren. And I think too is, a lot of times we hear sales is sometimes treated as a tip of the spear, right? And that is not true, right? Even just looking at this graphic is there are so many pieces that need to come together in order to have our customers buy something,
Yep.
right? I didn't say the word sales, right? It's
Yes.
really about if we build it, they will come, only happens in the movies,
Yep.
right? There is a serious amount of effort from no less than 5 teams here to bring a product and service to market. Sales is the one typically out in the field, right? Or on the phone doing what they need to be doing. However, there is a full team there. And I know, Darren, you've got a really great story to talk about that. There is a full team bringing these numbers to life at the end of the day. And
Yep.
so,
Absolutely.
yeah, you had talked before about there's a difference between pipeline management and sales forecasting. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I certainly will. I'm going to give one more comment though, just because you
Yeah.
used the phrase tip of the spear, because people love to say that. I hear that all the time too. Um,
Like
if
your
you do,
Aquaman.
yeah, exactly. If you do want to think about tip of the spear, if that's one that you love, think about the patch on a U.S. Army Special Forces shoulder. It's the spear. They call themselves the tip of the spear. Usually they'll say for that one person that's the tip of the spear, there are 10 to 100 people behind that person
Yep.
making sure they can do the work.
Yep.
Right. So that's one way to think about it. The wood behind the arrow, right? That's all those other functions, is everything we're talking about that's behind that 8-year, that seller in the room doing the work.
100%.
So, pipeline management and forecasting are two very different things. Salesforce used to beat this into my head. I'm a particular manager there. Pipeline is about creating enough top of funnel so that we can hit forecasts down the line.
Got it.
Right. So I'm thinking about pipeline. I'm thinking, okay, how are we getting things into the funnel? Is that an inbound motion, an outbound motion? Is that a partner motion? How is it funneling into different segments? How are we going to process or track things as they progress from maybe a raw lead to a marketing qualified lead to a sales qualified lead to actually get into an opportunity, hopefully closing status at some point? These are all the early actions we take to make sure that we're building a cadre of deals we can sell and close, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll forecast later. I'll talk in a bit about how I run pipeline calls differently than forecast calls because they're different things.
Yep.
That sales forecasting model is really that expression, again, of what we're going to do in a particular period of time. Those calls, which I'll talk about as well, are structured and mechanical. A pipeline call might be helpful. Hey, Dion, how can we get more leads from these folks? How can we advance these leads to get them into the funnel? What's working, what's not? that forecast call gets really structured.
Yeah.
Let's talk about these deals or these gaps to goal. How are we going to close them in this specific timeline, right? The outcome of a pipeline call might be a discussion of how to go get more stuff moving.
Yep.
Um, the outcome of forecast calls are going to be tangible steps to get a deal done. In this case, we're sitting on the 7th of the month by the 29th. We get an extra day this February, leap year,
Yeah.
right? One extra day to get the deal
Yeah.
done. But that sales forecasting calls me very mechanical and very specific about how we advance the ball on deals.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important distinction, which leads us into we have to make sure we're doing the work to talk about top of funnel and removing blocks and moving deals forward, starting them and even moving them forward, right? Now
Yep.
let's talk a little bit about why even sales forecasting is as important as it is.
Yeah, it's funny. I debated deleting this slide because I kind of telegraphed it
Yep.
earlier. It's how the whole business runs.
Yeah.
Um, but I left it in because I think it bears repeating.
Yes.
This is a HubSpot definition, right? I don't know if you use Salesforce CRM or HubSpot. It seems like it's usually one of the two these days.
Yep.
Maybe Dynamics. But accurate sales forecasts allow salespeople and leaders to make smarter decisions, right? If you want to shorten the decision, the talk track down from what I said earlier, it's
Yep.
how we make smart decisions for hiring, budgeting, prospecting. A great example that I love is people often say, but that was in budget. That was in my budget,
Right.
right? Why can't I hire that right now? Well, if we're missing forecasts,
Yep.
people lose budget,
Yep.
right? We got to pull from somewhere because we're not delivering what we say.
Yeah.
So really, it impacts everything you do. If you're in sales, look left, look right. Your forecast impacts everyone in the business.
Yep.
And you got to get it right. And most importantly, accuracy trumps all else.
Yeah.
If
That's
you come to me today as a seller and say, I'm going to be 80% of my number this month, and tell me I can take action, I can offer incentives, I can try to find other deals, I can try to make it up somewhere else.
right.
If you tell me you're going to be 120% all the way up to last day and you deliver 80%, I now have a gap I can't fill.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
without getting to a SaaS P&L, if you're in the SaaS world, right, $1 this month is worth a lot more than $1 next month. We're trying to think about revenue in the current fiscal year, right? So getting that timing right is really critical.
I think that's a really good point, Darren. And there's so much there. I think we could literally spend the next hour talking about the
Yeah.
accuracy and why it's important and stuff. And we can't spend money we don't have at the end of the day. And to your point, it's got to come from somewhere. I think there's also a very symbiotic relationship between all of the teams within an organization, right? Everybody has to be firing on all cylinders
Yes, for sure.
at the end of the day, too, right? Let's talk a little bit about the key stakeholders with forecasting, because I agree with you. I think you have more experience than I do. For me in sales and tech for 25 years, right? I was always on the inside sales team, running teams there. It does feel like sales is an island unto itself and nobody knows our pain, right? So,
Yep.
which isn't true. Like our feelings can lie to us, right? So let's talk a little bit about kind of why our stakeholders and give us all a little bit of perspective.
Sure. So for me, there's lots of potential stakeholders in every deal, and all of these stakeholders can inform the quality of your forecast. It's not just the seller or the account executive and maybe his or her first line leader. Um, when I'm running a forecast call, has a solution engineer been involved? Right? That could be true in small business philosophy as well as enterprise. What's the solution engineer's opinion on the likelihood of closing that deal? What did they think when they came out of the call? Executive leadership. Have you aligned power in our business with power at your prospects business? Have they had those conversations? Those are kind of core motions that a lot of people talk about and think about. In fact, on a later slide, I'll share some stats on the importance of relationships in a deal. But there are other functions I think people forget to talk to. Professional services or account management or onboarding. Have they been involved in this deal? Have they talked to the customer and shared how they will be onboarded? Do they have an opinion on how engaged the customer was? Customer success, same kind of thing, right? If you separate account management and customer success.
Yep.
Legal. I had a problem recently where people kept going to our website, prior job, and clicking on the online shrink wrap terms of use, printing them, and redlining them. And then emailing them the AE, finally said to the AEs, you haven't asked the customers about legal at all, have you? You haven't even asked them if they read the online terms. Have you told them, for example, that if the deal is less than X, we don't change terms at all? And
Yeah.
if you do want to change terms, it becomes a long form agreement and it's much more painful. Can we stay with the click wrap? Right. So there's all sorts of different stakeholders that are involved that if you get them involved early and ask their opinion of where things are, you can actually accelerate the closing process and not get those surprises at the end of the month. Because when you get that surprise legal red line on the 28th day of February, you're in trouble. You're going to miss the month,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories, you mentioned it earlier, when I was
Yeah.
at Salesforce, Mark Benioff at Sales Kickoff called a woman on stage. I won't say her name, but she was an awesome seller, one of the best I've ever met. And he said, if you helped her with a deal this year, please come and stand behind her. I want to say there were about 80 people who came up on that stage and stood behind her. It was the sales operations people, the solution engineers, the pros serve. It was the marketing folks, the field marketing folks, the event people, right? Really big organization. She was doing really big deals. But what Mark Benioff said at that moment was, if you're closing as much as she does with this level of consistency, I want all these people to be behind you too, right? So it's not just interrogating these people to say, will the deal close? It's the seller and the sales leader leveraging those people properly to advance the deal.
100%. And I think that's such a great story. And it does feel sometimes like we are an island unto ourselves, and we're not. And there's beauty and power in asking those questions and asking for help and digging in and being really, really proactive, because that also gives us this, right?
Yeah, without a deal. I mean, here's where the rubber meets the road. Can do this accurately and
Yeah.
deliver. Bad news doesn't age like fine wine. It's not a good thing, right? That's one of the things. So when the miss is coming, we want to know. And as leaders in particular, there's lots of things we can look at. Um, One I will say is more subjective or learned, and that's your people. Is the rep who I'm talking about forecast right now, is this my sandbagger? Or
Yep.
is this my wide-eyed optimist, right? I've had the reps who start the month and say, my quote is 100K, I can only deliver 63, nothing more, not a penny, and they come in at 120,
Oh,
right? Right. I have the ones who will send me to deliver 120 and they can only come in at 72,
right.
right? But I begin to notice the pattern. You can coach these sellers like crazy. You can try to change the behaviors. That takes time, right? So knowing who I'm dealing with informs how I treat their deals and how deeply I interrogate.
Yep.
So look at kind of their forecast accuracy and their past performance, and look at the consistency of it.
Yep.
That's really important. The
Yep.
next thing I'm looking at is what relationships each seller has. I already telegraphed that a bit. Are you at power? With whom are you speaking? Right? Digging into that. Um, I'm digging into the customer's buying process at the deal level. I'm in the first line leadership chair.
Mhm.
Show my age a little bit. But when I got started in sales, physical pieces of paper used to move from desk to desk to desk to get signatures,
Yep.
right? And at the end, they got faxed to you or mailed to you, right? So
Yep.
my understanding a process would be, hey, Dion, I know you want to buy this. Who has to sign the paper? Are they in the same building?
Yep.
How does the paper move from point to point? Can we get your admin to walk this through? Right? Are the people that need to sign in the office tomorrow?
Yep.
Right? I get in this really mechanical understanding of those transactions and those deals. And I might find out that from approval to signature was a 3-week process that I could not change no matter how I tried. That informs my close date,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Because close date accuracy is so important.
Yep.
Because I'm talking about close date, I'll talk about inspection of the details inside the CRM itself, right? I had a manager would start going through your forecast and he started to notice patterns. Hey, Daren, all of your deals in February are closing on the last day of the month. Really? Nothing's going to close earlier? What you're telling me here is that you're either, he was pretty aggressive with it, too lazy to put the real data in, or you're not asking the customer by when they can sign. Can we get this done by the 21st, 22nd, 23rd? Why can't we get it done by the 23rd?
Right.
What's the barrier, right?
Yep.
So you can start to look at deals. Why do you have deals closing on a Sunday in the CRM? Why do you have deals closing on a holiday, on MLK Day or Christmas? How are
Oh,
they going to be there, right?
yeah.
Um, so looking at that data is important. And since we're talking about the CRM, I think the sales leaders' use of CRM and driving accuracy is really important.
Yep.
My very strong opinion if you as a sales leader are sitting down with your reps and saying, okay, tell me what your deals are going to be, or give me a spreadsheet of your deals.
Yep.
While you use a CRM, you are doing it wrong,
Right.
flat wrong,
Right.
right? If I'm going to have a forecast call with you tomorrow, I'm going to go into the CRM today, and I'm going
Mhm.
to go through your top 7 deals for the month.
Yep.
And 9 times out of 10, I'm going to come to that forecast call and say, hey, Dion, I looked at your 7 deals for the month. These 4 I feel really comfortable with. I can see what's there. These 3 I think have the gaps I need to work on. Do you agree?
Yep.
Okay, let's go tackle these and see how we move these things.
Yep.
Or I'm going to say, last week when we met, we said these 3 deals, we're going to have these actions take place. I don't see them in the CRM. Did those actions take place? If no, why not?
Yep.
I'm going to come into the call with a very informed idea of how to advance the ball and hopefully help, because I've done my homework. I haven't put it on the rep to go try to figure out what I need to know. So I think those things are really important to do when you're driving accuracy. Do your research as a leader, come prepared for the conversation.
I love that, Daren. And I think that's what makes you such an excellent leader too. And for everybody that's listening to this, I think, the questions that you need to ask yourself, especially around your forecast accuracy, is on a scale of 1 to 10, how accurate are you? And if you want to improve, yes or no, out of these 7 things, where do you think you should start to dive into, to dig into for yourself and your reps to then improve the accuracy of your forecast, right? So that's kind of the takeaway that we want to think about in this slide, because that slides into this piece, Daren, too, which is how are we leading and leading well our teams at the end of the day? Because that is
Yep.
our responsibility.
It's huge. That's what we do. And it's how we make that commitment, that promise to the business. For me, I try to get into a really good cadence of meetings. I want the reps to know what to expect. Especially when I'm in the first line leadership role. We pipeline meetings are twice a month, probably in week 1 and week 3. We're going to talk
Okay.
about pipeline. We're going to analyze and see what's going on. People
Yeah.
build cadences, but that works for me pretty well. In terms of forecasting, especially in a velocity business, I'm probably gonna have a forecast call in week 1, 2, and 4.
Yeah.
Week 1 will be my least accurate. Week 2 is when I'm kind of putting my number in blood with the business and saying, here's what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
Um, right. Week 3, I'm like, be in the field, close, push, advance, take things off the table. Right.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're doing that all along, but I'm gonna save you some administrative burden of the forecasting call in week 3. Week 4, we might have a forecast call every day, which sounds kind of funky, but in that velocity model, we
Yeah.
might get on calls for a huddle as a team at the morning. Hey, are these 5 deals still in? Yes, no. If not, get them out. Let's move and constantly tune and tweak and look for gaps. So the week 1 and 3 forecast call are going to be deeper. That week 4 might be really quick, and it
Yeah.
might have the team. Constantly watching the data and reviewing. I've talked about structure, how I want to do things. This is also where I start to recommend bringing in some pattern breaking behavior,
Yeah.
right? Make sure the reps don't get into a rhythm where they expect you to do all the work.
Yeah.
Sometimes I come in and say, hey, Dion, I've taken a look in Salesforce. What's important to you today? What do you want to talk about?
Yep.
Total turn on its ear so they get something different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ask the solution engineer to join the forecast call. Have asked Jason to join the call today because I want his opinion on these 3 deals.
Yep.
Right. There's lots of things you can do to change it up. So I value consistency. But I
Mhm.
also like to disrupt periodically so people don't get into a rut. They
Yeah.
don't play expectations. They don't start telling me what I want to hear or only fill out the fields that I want them to fill out. Right. So you have to break things up every once in a while and put the seller in an unexpected position. Hopefully not uncomfortable, but unexpected.
Absolutely, Darren. And you know what? I love that too, because a lot of the things that, you and I have talked about this, and we talk about a lot with our clients, is as leaders and as an organization, it's our responsibility to provide the what and the why for our teams, what we're
Yes.
doing and why we're doing it.
Yep.
It's our goal too, to get our teams to a point where they own and can do the how.
Yes.
So what I love about that analogy, Darren, is what you're asking for didn't change. Your delivery did. Right. And so the reps, it does. So, and that definitely serves as a pattern interrupt for folks, right? Which is
Yep.
good, because sometimes we need that little shakeup of a perspective to get us thinking. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I 100% agree and love all of that. It sounds too like having that consistent system, right? So we all operate better in a system.
It matters. It matters. I'll give one thought that just popped in my head. I hadn't planned to talk about this. I know we're going to long on time. But it's
Sure.
really important that as a second line or a third line leader, you resist the urge to come and impose your will,
Yes.
how that first line leader is running it. If it's running well and it's working, observe before you tell them how to do. Right? I've seen people come in and say, I don't want it that way, I want it this way. And then everything's disrupted.
Yeah.
Right? Look for those first line leaders in particular, most important people in the business, in my opinion. I'll put it out there. I was one for a long time. You're one part seller and closer, one part manager, trying to learn how to manage up, right? It's really hard
A
job,
lot.
really
It's a, yeah,
important job. Um, resist the urge to tell them how to do it. If you have a corporate process, deploy it, but make sure you let them run it. Don't come in and hammer it.
100%. I think that's really, really a good nugget here for everybody. So again, same question for everybody here is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well do you think you're doing leading and managing your teams? And out of these 5 components, which one do you think you need to either triple down on or get better at to have a better experience for you and your entire team?
Yeah.
Daren,
So
when we
this,
were, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
It's
Uh,
okay. Go.
yeah, so look, this is one slide that I want to make sure got in. It's
Yes.
unpredictable times, right? 2023 was a crazy, crazy year.
Yeah.
I saw a preview of data from a company called EBSTA. They surveyed 300 plus companies. They looked at $37 billion worth of pipeline with a B, and kind of what's happened over the last 12 months. Win rates were down 18% across the data they surveyed. Deal values were down. I'm sorry, not surveyed, they analyzed. Deal
Right.
values were down 21%. Sales cycles elongated by 16%. 69% of sellers missed their quota
Yeah.
last year. 23% of the AEs or the sellers won 83% of new business. Right? So think about your sales, 23% of them won 83% of the new business. 44% of deals slipped. Right? When you're living in a world like that, you have to interrogate the details of the deals.
Yep.
You have to understand the relationships between your company and the prospective buyer's company, right? There's some data in there that said small deals, and so I'm looking at notes on the screen, so I'll make sure I get it right. Small deals with 1 to 3 relationships had a 29% average win rate.
Oh,
Small deals with 3 to 6 relationships had a higher rate of closed and closed faster. So just imagine asking your rep in that velocity business, how many people are you talking to? How many people do you have a relationship with? And
yeah.
knowing that if you have 3 to 4, your likelihood of closure went up and your sales cycle decreased.
Yep.
For medium-sized deals, they recommend having at least 7 to 9 relationships,
Yep.
right? Fewer than 6 relationships. If you cross the 7, 39% higher likelihood to close, right? The win rate decreased on enterprise deals. The average win rate increased by 87% once you cross 16 relationships.
Oh
So
my God.
imagine if you're calling a Toyota, right? Enterprise deal, right? The more people you're talking to about relationships with, the higher chance. So, there's a lot of people now who say it's all about Zoom. 70% of the buying decisions done before I get there, right? It's the last 30%. That doesn't mean you don't have to get to the people.
Right.
That
Right.
doesn't mean you don't get your face in the place, whether in person or via Zoom,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Relationships matter. So in
Yep.
these crazy times, get into the details,
Yep.
understand the relationships, continuously interrogate,
Yep.
add value, use your internal team, right? That's how you're going to drive accuracy and get the job done.
I think that's so important. And you had said that phrase when we were going through this and prepping for this time together, get your face in the place.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And I know, so man, if I had a nickel for every time a salesperson would say, well, I'll make phone calls, but nobody ever responds, right? Or I'll send a video message, but nobody ever responds, do it
Yep.
anyway.
Yep.
Right. So
Absolutely.
you have to do it anyway. And it's super easy. Like I send video messages on LinkedIn all the time.
Yep.
And it's amazing. And people respond. And sometimes they go, oh my gosh, I didn't know I could do that on the LinkedIn mobile app. I'm like, it's amazing. Right. Because sometimes it's easier to send a video and a short video to say hi than it is to type it out.
Yep. Super
So
cool.
get in there. And again, looking at these numbers and kind of thinking about the ground that we've covered today with Daren giving us these valuable insights. What do you need to do today to start creating a system for yourself, right? Things of that nature to make it better. And as always, we always have kind of a pseudo worksheet for you, thinking about the three-step approach that we teach our clients is being, how do you identify, how do you specify, and then what does it look like to execute? So throughout this entire time together, really identify which of the areas that Daren shared with us today really resonate most with you, and where, if you were going to focus on a specific area, would you get the biggest lift, right? And you might have more than one, you probably do. Then prioritize them. And you can do that when you get really specific around it, right? And you want to keep in mind your people, process, and technology. That hasn't changed in, 50 years. And again, what needs to happen first? Once you identify and specify, find step one, because that will give you the momentum you need. And then, of course, you want to think about executing. Do you have a kickoff meeting? Do you have a structure in place? Have you communicated that structure? Right? Have we talked about how we're going to manage progress? So these are things that we want to think about at the end of our time together here when we think about the importance of forecasting. Daren, thoughts?
I love it. The framework you give here is awesome. Identify, specify, execute. Taking the time to do this and document your takeaways will absolutely help you change the game. And writing it down, I'm a big believer in that.
Yep.
I still have mechanical pencils, again, old school. I underline things. I write them down. I think it's a great model.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I agree. Like, my pen and paper don't run out of battery and they don't need Wi-Fi. And there's
Yep.
so much research out there that talks about when we actually physically write something, there's a connection with our brain. And
Yes.
so our next steps for everybody, right? Review this information. You're going to complete the exercise that we just showed you on slide 12. Get social and take action with this. Get with your teams, talk about it, come up with a plan. I love the phrase that is attributed to Albert Einstein that says, if Albert Einstein had an hour to solve a problem, he would spend 59 minutes thinking about the problem and 1 minute solving it, right? Once you have a plan in place, you can go, right? The roads we drive on, that happened after extensive planning and permitting and God knows what else, right? But it's easy for me to get my kids and to where I need to be very easily because of the planning that went into getting that road in place, right? And so contact Daren and I. Daren and OutsetOps have an amazing ebook coming out. Email him directly or reach out to him directly with ebook pre-order in the subject line. Daren, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we've got a great ebook coming out. It's covering the 8 steps to plan effectively when you're building your kind of go-to-market plan for future fiscal periods. I think it's a really quality piece of content. It'll be widely available at the end of this month, but if you reach out to me, we'll make sure to get you an early copy of it. Follow me on LinkedIn. We're putting much more content there all the time. Connect with me. I'd love to talk to you.
Love it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. As always, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate you. We appreciate you taking the time out. Hopefully you were able to get out and maybe take a walk while you were listening to this. Please make sure you do take us up on help implementing some of these things. Daren and I are always, always, always happy to talk with folks. And we wish you an amazing rest of your day. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks, Daren.
Thanks a lot.